down, look around you, son. Today is just today and not tomorrow. Where you're going, you can rest your head.
Good morning. Welcome back to A Good Life Farm. Constance here. Well, we have officially gotten our first 2 frosts. We got one over the weekend, although I was out of town, so I didn't see it myself. Mr. Smith told me about it. But we got one again this morning, and you know, that means that all of these delicate plants that have still been hanging on out here in the garden are going to be dying off quickly and looking pathetic. You can see the beans up here, the winged beans already browned up. So you can see my cardinal basil is turning all brown. Some of it's green down in there a little bit, but all the top part is browning up. My Thai basil over here is actually looking really good. We'll see how it looks this afternoon. Now the tops, again, at the very top, I don't know if you can see, it's kind of bright out here. They are a little dark, but yeah. The frosts have come. It's been so late. I mean, this is almost a month later than our typical frost. Now, even though we haven't had frosts until now, we have in the last week or so had some really cold temperatures, and that is all it took to do in the loofah gourds, as you can see. Now, there's a ton of loofah gourds still out there on the trellis, but I have harvested a whole bunch of them, and I'll do a video later this week and show you what I do with them once I harvest them. Now, the ones I harvested are ones that were dried up or nearly dried up. Now, some of these heavily developed ones, I'm told you can sort of put them in the oven and dry them out that way. But I had so many loofah gourds this year that I was able to fill up a whole huge basket full of ones that are already completely dried naturally, and so those are the ones that I'm going to use. But yeah, as you can see, loofah gourds do not handle cold temperatures. Even though we haven't had a freeze yet, this all started dying off as soon as it started getting cold, well before the frosts. My lantana flowers down here, if you can see that, are looking horrible. They are definitely not frost hardy at all. One frost does them in. You can actually still see some of the frost down here on this creeping thyme. See that there? I mean, we have had such an extended autumn here and such a late frost and freeze that the garden, even though some of the stuff was gone, a lot of the stuff was gone and done with, the garden was actually still looking pretty nice. And so I had cleaned out some things, but there was a lot of stuff I was just leaving out here because it was still looking great, you know? You don't tear stuff out if it's still thriving. But now that we've had 2 frosts, that is going to change. Here's some more basil that's looking wretched. Alrighty, so like I said, the the first frosts have officially hit, and So now everything in the garden is going to start dying off. That means now that it's going to start looking ugly, I will have to get out here and really do a big clean out. It won't happen this week though, because I have a lot to do this week. I've got some deadlines coming up for some projects. You know, I do YouTube and I'm a blogger, a writer, but I also write for publications, so I have deadlines that are things that you guys don't see. But so I've got some stuff coming up, some interviews I need to do and things like that. So super busy week this week, and so the garden is not going to get cleaned out anytime soon. Maybe next week. We'll just have to wait and see, because I mentioned in a video the other day that I've got something else that I'm working on that I'm not going to share with you guys yet, but I do have another very quick trip that I'm going to need to do in correlation with this project, and so I will take you guys along when that comes about, but it's coming up here very soon, maybe even next weekend. I have to, we'll see. But anyways, yeah, so everything's gonna start dying off and looking really ugly out there. But that's just the way it is. It's the end of the season, and when that first frost comes, all of those delicate plants out there, just, it does them in. I have found that here in Garden Zone 7B, Northern Alabama, that I can often go out there and harvest a little bit of oregano, of course rosemary. Rosemary is very hardy. It's an evergreen type of plant. Things like that I can go out all year and get here, which is really nice. And a lot of the herbs that I plant out there are perennial, so they'll come back every year, which is very helpful. Now I have new things that I planted this year that I haven't had to go through a winter, so we'll just see how they hold up. Different varieties of sage, like golden sage, the tricolor sage, a couple different kinds of thyme, like the lemon thyme, the silver posy thyme. And so we'll just have to see how those do. I'm not sure how they hold up with cold temperatures. I don't know if that's something that I could go out and harvest all year long, or if it will hold up. Actually, German winter thyme is something that I had in the past that did really well, and I was able to harvest all winter long as well. So all of those different kinds of thyme, we'll see how they do this year, and the sage and all of that. But you know, I go end of summer, beginning of autumn, I go out there and I harvest a bunch of herbs. I dry them. In the past, I've dried them in a dehydrator, and that works great, but then I bought a very simple drying rack for herbs, and I just hang it up in an out-of-the-way location. I've been using it in the corner of the bedroom where I used to have that rack for starting all of my seedlings. And of course it has no motor, it's silent, doesn't use any electricity or anything like that. And it holds a bunch of different things, and so I've been using that to dry herbs. I fill up my mason jars, I put them in my pantry, and I've got homegrown herbs to use all year long until the next season when the fresh herbs are thriving once again. But I go out and I harvest my thyme, my oregano, basil, all that stuff. The only thing I don't ever harvest anything of really is the rosemary, just because I can go out there anytime and get fresh rosemary from the garden. You know, I went on 2 road trips this past week, short trips. The first one I went to northern Georgia and back. Went to my sister-in-law's to pick up a cradle for the coming grandbaby for my son and daughter-in-law. So I went and got that, and then over the weekend I went to a little bit further south in Georgia to Macon. Now the first trip I was by myself, but the second trip I went with a friend who I've actually known her for years. We used to work together. I wrote for a website called Hip Homeschool Moms. It's a homeschooling, of course, website. And I've known her for years. We've never met in person. And so we finally met in person. We did this trip together. And, you know, we did all of these back roads. Both of those trips that I went on were back roads trips. And went through the mountains. And it's so strange that the leaves and everything were just beginning to turn colors in the beginning of November. Such a late autumn this year, because to me autumn doesn't really become official until you get your first frost, but there were beginnings of color, and it was a lovely drive. So I love taking the back roads. Now I am also a let's get going and be efficient on the drive kind of person. So I mean I have no problem driving the interstate, but it is nice to take the back roads now and again. And this was a trip that I had been wanting to do for a while. She and I were supposed to go on it together back in May, but then her whole family got sick, so we had to reschedule because I don't travel during the summer, not during garden season. And so we were waiting till later in the year to do that trip. And yeah, so we went ahead and did that because, you know, the state of the world and the way things are going, I don't know if there will be any more opportunities to go. I mean, we don't know what the future holds. So, yeah, we wanted to go ahead and do that road trip before the opportunity passes. But I will say that driving those back roads, going through just the rural areas and the mountains and seeing all of these quaint little villages and the small towns and the farms and all of that, you know, it almost makes me want to move. Almost. Because, you know, when we bought our property here 5.5 years ago, it was very quiet out here. But I've noticed in probably the last 1.5 to 2 years, we live near a rather busy road, and it kind of goes off towards another town. In the last 1.5 to 2 years, that road has gotten more and more busy, and it's like there's constant traffic noise over there now, and we can hear it all the way up here. Even in the summer, even when all of the trees and everything are full of leaves and all of that, we can still hear it. It's getting so loud because there's new subdivisions going out, you know, further away from town, further out in the country, and people are commuting, and that just makes more traffic because it's creeping in. So it being out there in that more rural area and the peace and quiet, it almost makes me want to move. But don't worry, I have no intentions of ever moving again. You know, Mr. Smith and I, we lived the army life for 25 years. We lived all over the place. This is my 19th home. 19th home as an adult. I do not want to make it 20. But I can't, you know, in truth, I can't say never. You know, they say never because, you know, God might have other plans. But I have no intention of ever moving again. But it would be nice to be a little more out in the country and a little bit quieter. So, alright, well, that is it. I am going to wrap this up for today, head into the house and start working on those deadlines that I was telling you about. Now, like I said, I am going to share that loofah video, and I have a few other things in mind to share with you guys this week. So thanks for hanging out with me here again at the homestead. My name is Constance at A Good Life Farm, and I'll talk to you all next time.